In a minute we'll start playing some trailers and then I'll do a little intro and we'll rock and roll. Now if you guys want to ask questions, you text me, okay? And if I'm actually doing this on the phone, I'm not doing emails, I'm actually looking at your questions, so it's okay. Well, if I get bored, I might do a couple of emails, it'll be fun. Tony won't be boring. Marty said he's falling asleep, so I managed to get him a coffee. Right, 5 past, guys. Reckon we could rock it. Woohoo! Here we are, we're actually live in Melbourne. It's so exciting to actually see people in the room. My name's Denise Eriksen and I'm co-founder of Media Mentors Australia. Our business is to help creatives create, and what a better place to be tonight I can't think of. Before we start, I would like to acknowledge the traditional owners of the land that we're working from tonight, the Wurundjeri and the Boon Wurrung people of the Kulin Nation. And we pay our respects to elders past, present, and in fact to all of the Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people around the country. Thanks to ACMI, Film Vic and AFTRS. You've already seen the trailers, but they're our sponsors and we couldn't do this without them. But actually you're not here to talk all that stuff. You're here to hear all about success and meet this fantastic panel that we've got here tonight. Before we start, I mean, really success comes in many ways, from failure, from the pressure to keep delivering, from an artistic vision, and from some quite unlikely platforms. And all of that is demonstrated by our panel here tonight. I'm going to introduce them very briefly because we're going to get them talking in a minute. I've assumed you read their CVs, so I'm not going to bang on about what they've done. On the very far end there, Marty Benson, who his main job really is, at the moment, why he's here for, is EP of the MasterChef machine, but he's also Director of Local Content. God, I got it right.
Director of Content for Endemol Shine.
Endemol Shine, here right in Melbourne, which we're so happy to have. So welcome.
Thank you.
Laurence Beer is the most extraordinary producer and director and writer and everything of documentaries, but she's also launched brands across platforms like Lonely Planet. Tony as well, he just keeps churning out the hits. I mean, what can I say? But we are going to go back deep into his past tonight. So you're going to play a clip which might surprise you. And here is the gorgeous Naomi Higgins, who's the sort of new end of the panel tonight, I think. Naomi, welcome. And she does the amazing comedy Why You Like This on ABC and other things on things like Twitch, which we'll come to, because really, no idea. But success also, you know, the careers come from starts. And so tonight we're going to start. Tony, how the earth? Oh, you studied photography and printmaking initially, and you were an exhibition curator?
Yeah, so I kind of got into film in a very roundabout way. I sort of went to university and studied literature, and then I dropped out of university and went to art school, and then I didn't want to drop out of art school as well, so I Finished art school, but I knew at the end of first year that I didn't want to be an artist. And so at the end of that, I think I was more addicted to going to studying than anything else. So the only thing I could think of next was film school, because it sort of combined words and pictures. And so I ended up at film school and in my late 20s, and that's how I got into it.
And you are an AFTRS alumni, of course.
AFTRS alumni, yes, absolutely.
Very much so. Well, we're going to hear more about you in a bit, but I want to find out from Laurence. You did an MBA first, didn't you?
Yeah, I had no idea. I had no idea what I wanted to do, so I thought I'll do something that might lead to something eventually. And so I did a business school, which in France, you can hear from my accent, that's where I grew up. And that's quite a common path of rather unimaginative people who are not quite sure what there is to life, but are keen to work that out. And that's what I did, and in the end, that was good. And I came to Melbourne as part of the Melbourne University MBA, and I just fell in love with the city, and then I sort of worked my way back here, which took a few years. And the business end of it, ultimately when you make films, it's hard to separate the two, because any idea you have has a cost, and so all those things and the financing of a film, like this goes on forever. So it's helped me, I think, as a filmmaker to not be scared of Excel spreadsheets and things like that.
And one of the great stories you were telling me when we talked about it is that you ended up at Lonely Planet and you launched their sort of travel show business, really, didn't you? Making program productions is what I'm trying to say.
I started here at Lonely Planet as an intern. I was amazed. They were Australian. I thought they were American or British or something, and they were in Hawthorne, which was so unlikely. And I started as an intern, and then I went to France, and because they just launched the books into French, and they just were trying to work it out. So I came along and helped do that, and then eventually I came back to Melbourne. I was looking after the global brand. And in the context of that, we were thinking, this was 1999, and this was just the internet had started. People at Lonely Planet at the time they were kind of on it, really, and they kind of had a sense that, you just could not just do books. Like, there was something around the corner, there was something probably around moving images, and we should probably get into that space. And so I was involved in plotting that, and then decided we'd do it, and then ended up doing it.
And you told me you launched the production in London on a certain September 11.
So we had these grand plans to launch this, travel production company at Lonely Planet, global programming, travel programming, and we launched that on September 11, 2001. And we were in London, and basically saw the whole thing unravel at Channel 4, BBC. We had back-to-back meetings with everybody, and we were trying to say, we were trying to talk about travel, and it was like the curtain just dropped. And then we were meant to go to Washington, DC and stuff, and we just U-turned and came back home. So it was a rough start, but...
From failure comes success.
Yeah, and it just never works out as according to plan, isn't it? But we carried on, and we did quite a few shows in the end. So that was good.
Perfect. Now, Naomi, double science and an engineering degree, then a software startup. That was an unusual start for where you've ended up.
Yeah, well, I thought that's the best way to get a TV show, right? Engineering degree.
Sounds good.
Yeah, I liked acting and stuff like that. I guess I grew up in the country, so I didn't think that was a career that you could have. Don't know why. But so then when it got to VCE, because I was good at maths and science, I just ended up, I was like, okay, well, I'll go into engineering and science. So I did a double degree, and then a few years in, I started working at a software startup, and I was like, oh, this is my life now. This is the end. And I have depression. So then I was seeing a lot of comedy at the time, because Melbourne has a great comedy scene. We have the comedy festival. And then I was like, oh, I really, really like this. So then I started doing stand-up comedy and started trying to write things. And then, more of that kind of work and hustling, and ended up with a TV show.
Well, as you do. Well done. Now, Marty, you told me you were going to be a footballer, as every good Scots person wants to be.
I realised at 30 that was not going to happen.
But then you had a business degree as well. What possessed you?
I don't know. I just wanted to go to college. I travelled. I left school with no qualifications at all. I travelled the world, the kind of hippie trail for 3 years. I had an amazing time in India and Thailand and Vietnam, and then I came home and I was like, I don't want to work. So I went to university and I got into, I wanted to go study by the sea. So I went to Bournemouth and they let me, I wanted to study history, but they said I wasn't clever enough. So they let me study this PR and commerce degree, and I did it. I hated it, but I got through. I had a brilliant time for 4 years, but the academic side of it was shit. Excuse my language. And then from that, I got a job in London in public relations. I was still young enough and wild enough to realise that if you don't like what you're doing, get out of it. And so I was like, I cannot do this. I don't care what I do, but I can't do this.
I did love the process that you then undertook, though. You were very scientific, you know.
I had some friends. I had some friends that worked in music and television, and this was before the internet. And so I thought they can wear their jeans to work. They're cool. So I literally wrote to 50 music companies and 50 TV production companies in London. And it's a bit of a cliche, but I remember writing, I'd make a great cup of tea. You know, I'm prepared to half my wage and I make a great cup of tea. And I got 3 job interviews, 1 in the music industry and 2 in the TV industry, and I got one of the ones in the TV industry.
And it was a researcher. No, it wasn't. It was a runner, wasn't it?
I was meant to be a runner, and then on my first day, the researcher, they don't really have researchers here in entertainment, but anyway, the researcher didn't turn up. And so I got promoted on day 1. Just for showing up. And I was told that it was my duty to cast this game show. And it was a game show called Backdate. It was on Channel 4 in the afternoons. It was a nostalgic game show hosted by Valerie Singleton. And the prize was a book. So I've got, you know, it was one of these shows that it was crazy. So I'll just tell one quick story, but I was given a general knowledge quiz, which was 40 questions. And I had to travel around the country going to hotels, weird hotels all around England. And people that wanted to be on the show had to come and sit this test. And basically, if they scored over 30 out of 40, they were immediately discarded for being too clever. It was good fun, though. Yeah.
But, I mean, that's a brilliant sort of background, which is the most clumsy segue I'll do all night. We can now talk about MasterChef, because you're now running an absolute mega production. You were telling me that you're shooting episode 41 at the moment.
Tomorrow's at 41. Today was at 40. Yeah.
It's a machine. Look, I reckon I'd like to play a clip, because I'm sure not everybody in the room has seen MasterChef, but frankly, I'm disgusted if you haven't, because it's a brilliant show and I bloody love it. But let's have a little look at a clip from this series, or the trailing of this series.
Sure.
While they may well be home cooks when they walked in that door, as the season is progressing, we're seeing dishes that I would be proud to have on my menu.
2020 was a year where people have really gone, what am I doing with my life? And I think that has brought these contestants to this place, to right now.
People have decided and realised that it's not now, when. This is their one shot. They're all in. It's heart and soul on the line.
They're better looking than Gary, Matt and George, aren't they? Sorry, Denise.
Damn ya. Beautiful show, bloody love it. I think it's amazing. And I think, like, why I wanted to have you on this is that we were reading some research recently which says MasterChef Australia is one of the, I think, if not the most successful MasterChef on the planet, and it's one of the biggest exports in Australian production. It's seen in a gazillion countries around the world, and you've revolutionised the show. You must be under huge pressure though to keep it up there every episode. I mean, every series is a success. How do you even start with that? How do you cope?
It helps when your boss says to you every single day, it's got to be better. So, yeah, I love that. The person that I report to is very much like, we can always do it better, no matter what. Don't ever rest on, that was as good as it gets. And so that's what we always strive to do, genuinely. So, yeah, there is a lot of pressure, but we have an incredible team of people that make the show. I know it sounds a bit cliched, but, and also the show has a great philosophy, and I do believe that it's ordinary people, extraordinary food, so it's anti-casting. We don't want the kind of classic kind of, I don't know, Italian mama or blonde bimbo, or we don't cast for character. We cast people that are genuinely wanting to change their life and have a passion for food. And there's not many other shows that do that.
No.
And I think that's one of its great secrets for its success. The other one's probably just the extraordinary, clever format. You know, every night of the week's actually a very different format, and it hooks you in. You know, it just draws you in. You know, the mystery box is very different to the pressure test. It's very different to immunity, and people are watching and they're going, "Oh my God, I've got to watch tomorrow." It's very clever, like a lot of new dramas are these days.
And it's a BBC-owned format, isn't it? Is that right?
It's owned by Endemol Shine, who are now Banerjee. So it's now owned by Banerjee, who own something like 4,000 formats.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I remember you telling me you went to a conference with all of the EPs of MasterChef. How many were there?
At the conference, there was 40. Yeah, I flew to Copenhagen for 3 days, and we sat there around a table in the MasterChef studio there in Copenhagen, which was really quite sad compared to ours. But there was 40 of us, and it was sort of interesting. But the problem is, no other country does it like we do it, because no other network's mad enough to commit to so many episodes.
What is it, 60?
We do 60, at the moment it's 65 episodes a season, yeah, so it's ridiculous. But when you're talking to the UK or America, or, you know, they all do 12 or 14 or 18 episodes a season. Yeah. But again, I think that's, I don't want to bang on all night, so let's move on. But I think that's one of the reasons why we're successful is because we're on every night of the week. And if you hook in at the beginning, by the end of it, you are really attached to these contestants. Yeah. And that's part of the secret of its success.
I've got a question for you. Oh, God.
Shoot.
If I can actually... Here it is. You got the food. I heard the food is cold by the time MasterChef tastings are ready to be filmed.
Yeah.
How do you combat this when trying to make the show convincing and real?
The judges, once the cook is finished, and we've got the immediate reactions to the end of the cook, so like the genuine reactions where people are either elated because they're happy or gutted because they've forgotten an element or whatever. Once we've got these immediate reactions, the cameras go down and the judges quickly run round the benches. So you'll see most contestants actually make a second plate, but if not, the judges are constantly tasting everything hot. And we do reheat sauces, you know, and we keep ice creams in freezers. So things are as close to how they should be. But you know, with 24 contestants, it can take 5 hours to taste their dishes. Oh, so you can't ruin someone's dish. If you reheat certain dishes, you'll split them or ruin them. So the judges are just very good. You'd be surprised, dishes still taste good 5 hours later. But no, the judges generally have an idea of what the dishes are like before you see what you see on the television.
Well, that was a good question. I feel like we had a sort of behind-the-scenes sneaky one there. Okay, cool. We'll come back to you because I know there's more. Oh, just before we go on, though, what's the size of your crew? Like you said, how many editors?
We're about 200. There's 80 people in post-production and about 110, 120 in in the production office and in the studio every day.
Well, you are shooting one episode a day, basically, aren't you?
It's
so
crazy.
you sort of have to. But it makes everybody else have quite a small beer. But we do love small beer. Thank you. I'm coming back to you. I think that the next place I want to go to is completely the other end of the spectrum in terms of a documentary which took a love of labour for a very long time. Laurence is your creator, director. I mean, tell me your role on Freeman again.
I wrote, produced and directed it.
Okay, cool. I'd like
and
to
made tea as well.
Before we play a clip, I just want you to briefly run through how that came about, because you'd worked with Cathy Freeman before.
Yes, I knew her. I did a show for SBS called Going Bush back in 2005 or something like that, which had Cathy and Deborah Melman travelling across Aboriginal Australia. That was at Lonely Planet I did this show. And so I knew her, and I've always known her retired, but I guess just talking to her, I had a feeling that there was just something in that story that perhaps she hadn't really expressed, or maybe wasn't given a platform to talk about. And I watched a film, in fact, here at ACMI, perhaps even in that cinema, called Zidane, a 20th century portrait, which I don't know if you've seen, but it's such a brilliant football film. I'm a mad football fan, and I just thought that film just nailed what football is in a way that I'd never seen anything like that. Now, it's an experimental film. It's made by a video artist, Philippe Parano. But I was inspired by this, and I thought, if I could do something that had that magic and could recreate the magic of that moment, Cathy's race, like what the hell went on? Because it is so profound what went on. And just talking about it now, I'm sort of getting myself choked again. And this has been going on for 3 years. Like, I talk about this and it still gets me because it's such a beautiful moment. So my inspiration was to create something that could touch people and would recreate the magic of what happened, might make us reflect on what happened and why it matters 20 years later, but also bring to life Cathy's own experience, what it is to stand in the middle of that crazy thing. What is it like to be that person, that body? And so that's what sort of got me going, and then it took a while to
How many years did it take?
Well, I mean, when I got going, I came back to Melbourne, started my own production company, and I really wanted to do this. And this was in 2016, 17, so it's just taken about 3 years, which is quite standard in film terms. But what was interesting is that I actually didn't want to make a film at all. So because my idea was to bring people together, get that thing about connecting together. I actually thought the best way to tell that story was to make a live event. So for a long time, I worked on that. And talking about failures, my idea was to do a live event, a massive, big cube dropped on the forecourt of the Sydney Opera House with projection on the far side, a version of this film, I guess, dance, music, mass gathering in September 2020. So, see a pattern emerging here? So that didn't really work out. But of course, then I was like, obviously the idea was to connect everyone in Australia around that story, because Cathy reached, all the way up to Arnhem Land, and everyone watched this. It was the biggest collective experience, this nation's experience in our generation. So I thought, we could do a live event on the Sydney Opera House, but what, 5,000, 10,000 people are going to watch it? So I spoke to the ABC about, them coming on board, and originally it was really just about broadcasting that. And then I met some quite wonderful people there, and then somehow I had a meeting, and I somehow said, I'll do a 1 hour film, which I completely pulled out of my hat, because I was talking on a 20 minutes experimental thing. And then they said, we love that, and then I just got to just do it. And then I was like, okay, so how am I going to do that? Because that was not the plan at all.
Well, and I think that this is a perfect moment in a tick to play the Freeman clip, because the way you did it, and if you haven't seen this film, please go and see it. It's one of the most outstanding docos I've seen, because you took such revolutionary approaches and bold approaches to the film. So if we could play the Freeman clip, please.
It's what great art and great sport does. It inspires, it raises your sights, it gives you something to look up to. And that's what Kathy did. And she's 20 years on, it's just as powerful as it was.
Everything changed that day.
She brought the place together.
I feel like I won the race. I felt like I ran the race.
Everybody was the winner.
Black and white Australians could have won this.
I still feel the power of it.
Was it for nothing? Did we not learn anything?
It was just absolutely magical.
Nelson Mandela coming out of jail.
Jesse Owen running in Burners.
Kathy Freeman winning the 400 metres.
It's a beautiful clip, that, and the reason I wanted to play it, because I want you to talk about several things. I mean, Bangara, Stephen Page was deeply involved in the film, and you can see the dance and the choreography. So we'll talk a bit about that. But also, I wanted you to share how you did the interviews with Kathy Freeman, because that was amazing. And I want to know also how the hell you persuaded a broadcaster to think, that was a good idea.
Well, I guess because of what I've just said before, I guess I wanted to do something that worked on an emotional level. So I was very clear on the fact that it was really about a series of emotions rather than telling people a story and my worst nightmare. And in fact, we talk about the creative, how you create something, but for me, the vision of what I didn't want to do was as strong a force than what I wanted to do, because what I wanted to do was quite vague for a very long time. I had those conversations with my partner, and she'd be like, so what is it? And I'm like, well, and she'd be like, but what's on screen? And I'd be like, stuff. And then it'd be like, yeah, but like it's the vibe. It was the vibe. I had a very strong sense of the vibe. But what it was, it took a while. But I also knew what I didn't want is that sport documentary about Kathy Freeman's race, where she's sitting down on the chair, and a whole bunch of 60 years old are telling us how cool it was and how profound it was and how important it was. And you just watch that and you think, okay, I get that, but you just don't feel it. It's like, it goes through your brain. And so I was kind of thinking that way, and the live event aspect of it really made that very clear for me in a way. And I think that helped me making that film, because I didn't really approach it like I would if I had approached, let's make a documentary on Kathy Freeman's race. And so I really took that emotional gut feeling, and we cut the film really through a series of chapters that are kind of all have very strong emotional, they put you in an emotional state. And I guess the great thing about that is that, and that's really a byproduct of it, that was a surprise, is by the time people watch the race, they all in. Yeah. Even though they know that we all know how it ends, there's no suspense really. But when I watched the Google Box thing, that was hilarious. People were literally like that watching the race. And I was like, okay, that's funny, because I guess when you watch something a million times, you don't really know how it plays out anymore. But I think because people were emotionally reliving that whole thing, when they got to the race, they found themselves exactly like we were on the 25th of September 2000, which is there was so much at stake. It mattered so deeply, and it still matters 20 years later. So that was kind of a cool thing, I think, which the stress part of the film, which we didn't cut to that, but was a byproduct, I think, of the emotional layering that we tried to do. And with Kathy, she's an elite athlete. They are funny people. Like they are, you don't do, she was quite an extraordinary athlete, and she had a natural talent, but I don't think you do what she's done both on the track and off the track without being incredibly special. So she, walk around and behave like, a Brighton mum, but underneath there's something extraordinary. And I guess one of the first, but talking about the vibe for that film, one of the first thing I saw when I thought about this film is I actually saw us lying down on the floor, no lights, and recording, and take me back there, just let's go back to that moment and just have something that feels a bit more like psychoanalysis than, a TV interview. And that's kind of what we did. I didn't lie down, but she was lying down on the couch, and she took me right back there, and it was just the most extraordinary thing I've ever witnessed. Actually.
And to see no chair interviews to me was fantastic. But how did you think that did the ABC were thinking that was a neat idea?
They were
and you didn't even film the pictures, did you? You actually just recorded on sound.
I had contractual conversation with them. They were like, but so, okay, we like it, but can we film her? Like, if it doesn't work, can we have a clause that we can film her? They were shitting themselves. I mean, it was sort of the whole thing was so wrong on so many levels, like the whole even contemporary dance thing. I mean, try to tell the ABC, and I had such a wonderful support, but they had to sell like prime time, 7:30 Sundays, like prime time mainstream slot, and have contemporary dance, Bangara, no pieces to camera. It was hard sell, and I was so lucky that I met some people at the ABC who just bought the vibe. They believe in the whole thing, and then they just went with it. And I think they probably crossed their fingers until the very end. But I think it was satisfying in many ways. I got the feeling from people who worked on it. I think it was lovely that it worked commercially.
Wow, it was Australia's most viewed documentary last year.
It was the most watched documentary of the year, which is great. And it did so well, and it was in fact one of the most watched program of the ABC, full stop, which is unusual because normally documentary is just further down and drama is further up. So it's been a commercial success, and I think it's made everybody feel quite good that you can do stuff that's trying to raise, people I strongly believe that people's visual culture is extremely sophisticated. If I look at my Instagram feed and people do stuff with no budget, it's extremely sophisticated. The language of, I think, film has evolved in a major way in the last few years, and I think that television in some parts is not reflecting that. And when you've got something like MasterChef that's beautiful, like we watched, it's reality TV, but it's beautifully made. It speaks to people, mainstream people, who like, and I think Freeman, the stress there was around the fact that it might be elitist and a bit sort of opaque. I think that it spoke to people, and that's what people wanted to watch, and it was rewarding, I think, for everyone involved.
I just love that success came from such a left of field thing. So I think everybody out there will be now saying, I'm going to interview all my people lying down because the Ron's dead, so it's fine, and it was the best documentary all year. It's worked for her. So I am, I love live events. It's fantastic. It's so nice. Sorry, I'm not being rude to people that are just arriving, but I think it's brilliant. I want to flick now to Naomi Higgins here. I'm going to actually play the clip first, actually, of why you like this, and then talk about how it came about.
Great.
So could we play clip 3, please?
Oh my God, I'm so excited for Mardi Gras this year. Aren't you excited for Mardi Gras?
Sure.
I'm working with a homophobe. And by the way, garlic can actually be really spicy depending on your palate.
I need a nice brown or Asian or whatever person to fuck.
Stop bullying her.
Another unrealistic expectation for women? Because everyone who isn't us are idiots who should die.
What about you, Austin?
I'm gay. Therapy is incredible, Penny.
When are you going again?
Again? No. I'm cured. I wish I was dead.
I have a tall vagina.
But you're not that tall.
But my vagina's tall.
You're Maddie Uwu.
Please don't bully me.
You're pimping a child.
See?
She's not a child.
I single-handedly increased the wage gap.
Hurry up, sluts! It's fine, I'm gay.
Well done, I bloody love that.
Thank you. So just like Freeman, really.
I must say, when I first watched it, I was going, oh, gosh, there's things you learn all the time when you're working together. It was amazing. That was Fresh Blood Initiative from ABC again, wasn't it?
Yes, and Screen Australia.
And Screen Australia,
yeah.
Cool. So tell me who wrote it, what was your role on it exactly? For people watching?
So Fresh Blood is an initiative where they just get people to pitch. It's for a comedy, and it's the second time they've run it, and so there were 20 web series to be funded. So we applied for that. So it was me and 2 other people. and we became the co-creators. So we just kind of wrote this pitch. I was just like, I might as well do something. Like, I knew people who were doing things, and I was like, I'm better than them, so I might as well throw my hat in the ring. So we came up with this vague idea and wrote a pitch, and then we got funding for one of the web series, and we were like, oh, okay, we have to make it now. And the idea was, one of the other writers is my partner, Mark Samuel Bonanno, who you might know from Auntie Donna sketch group. And he knew this couple who were directors, and they had up until that point only shot like fashion stuff and ads and like really, really beautiful stuff. And so the idea was to get them on board and write stuff that was just really like just disgusting, but have it shot really beautifully. And so we did the web series, and then there was the pilot stage. So we got one of the 4 pilots that were up for grabs. We made the pilot, and then off the back of that, I guess we won Fresh Blood. And then we had a phone call with Netflix. I don't know if you know this, but ABC doesn't have that much money for some reason.
Funny that you should mention it. I didn't know. Tony's looking completely noddy there.
So we had a phone call with Netflix, and I guess because the themes of the show are quite international and relatable across the world, they came on board. So it was co-produced by Netflix. So it's out on ABC iView at the moment.
That's right. Yeah, don't miss it because it is hilarious.
Guys. And then on April 16th, it'll come out on Netflix, not in Australia, but around the rest of the world.
I do want you to share the Netflix pitch story that you told me, because I think it was, you know, a brilliantly exciting way to pitch. Somebody came in late, I believe.
Yes.
So, but tell the story, because it's gorgeous.
We had to have a phone call. Rick Kowalski, who used to work at ABC, sort of pitched the show for us, I guess, before he told us about it. Was like, have a phone call with Netflix. So we're like, okay. So we're sitting down in a room in ABC, just on a phone conference thing, and we were talking to a couple of the executives, but one was running late, and we just like 2 days before just scurried together to like write down some storylines that would work for the series, because they wanted to hear examples, and we had nothing yet. So, you know, we wrote some down and we started explaining them over the phone, and Hum, the third co-creator, we had a storyline about her, in her words, decolonizing her pussy, which is, you know, activism, but also really stupid. So, you know, she's talking about this, and she's like, okay, so then the idea is, you know, it's based on me decolonizing my pussy. And they were like, sorry, what? And Hum's like, decolonize my pussy. And they were like, one more time, decolonize my pussy. And then this 60-year-old man is like, so I'm here. And I guess that's what sold it. But they were doing that on purpose. They really wanted this like old man to hear what we had to say, which is just smart, really. So that's my advice.
I love it. So, what was it like to make it? Was it like, was it what you expected?
No. I mean, I wasn't planning on a global pandemic. That took me by surprise randomly. But it was the first time I'd sort of written anything that big at all. We wrote the web series, and then we wrote the pilot, but writing the other 5 episodes is like the most emotionally and mentally taxing thing I've ever done. Very, very stressful. And then, to go straight into the acting, I was just basically exhausted, but it was also amazing to, you know, I'm still pretty new, so writing stuff down, writing stupid things down, and then having just like teams of people who are so talented who like bring it to life. You're like, oh my God, I can't believe I made you do this. And then, we got shut down during COVID, which was a bit of a bummer, but you know, we got back up in the end, which is, thankfully we'd shot most of it, so I think we'd sunk too much money into it for them to cancel it at that point, so thank God. But we got back up, shot the rest of it, and delayed the release a bit, but still worked out pretty good.
Okay, cool. I want to play another clip that you're in as well, because one of the things that I'm fascinated by as an old bugger, you know, I've been around since Adam was a baby, that the great new platforms where you find talent these days, and run me through some of the talent. You told me all these names that I didn't know about. We're going to play a clip in a minute from Twitch. But should we play the clip first and then talk about it?
I think that would be very confusing.
Yeah, well, maybe talk about it first.
Yeah, Twitch is a live streaming platform. It's mostly for gaming, but I play games recreationally, but I'm not good at it. But I think during lockdown, I think people got really creative in the ways that they kept creating because so much stuff was shut down. So, I've seen TV shows come out of people's Instagram lives, and one of the things that I started doing was Twitch, and a lot of my friends as well, because we had nothing, we couldn't I have a lot of comedian friends, they couldn't gig, they couldn't go on stage, they had no outlet anymore. So I started doing Twitch, and it can be video gaming, but it can also be showing cooking or dancing or performance art or anything like that. So,
but it's different from TikTok, isn't it? Because you could, let's watch this clip. No, come on, let's watch it, because then you can explain.
This is a segment I used to do on Twitch.
Let's be friends.
Okay. How do we shake hands?
Look,
let me
go.
try. There we go.
Hey,
okay.
I was waiting! The feud was over!
I tried to shake hands. My gun came out instead, and then it went kabam. I did not know you would.
Beck, shooting women in the head is problematic. I won't stand for it. Some people debate whether this is true. I say don't shoot women in the head. That is my stance on it. I don't think anyone should be shooting women in the head, especially other women. You should know what it's like to be shot in the head, and you shouldn't be shooting other women in the head. I won't stand for it any longer. How dare you? How absolutely dare you? You are cancelled.
Now, Beck's a really well-known comedian as well, isn't? I mean, she is.
Yeah.
So
she runs a comedy production company. These are all other streamers, so it's just my opportunity to talk shit about them, basically.
So, I mean, the whole point of that clip is that, there's all sorts of ways of finding talent. Is that how you describe being discovered as well, in a sense, or having the background to be able to do the series for ABC and Netflix?
Absolutely. I don't think I would have gotten it without being a stand-up comedian first. It really gets your foot in the door, and I think that young people are really creative in the ways that they do that. I mean, all the comedians I know have some sort of live stream. They do, stand-up or improv or something like that, and everyone has a podcast, if not 5. And so you're just always churning through content, and TikTok, Twitter, Instagram. You do not stop, and you usually don't make a lot of money from it, but it's a really, I think that it's probably easier than it used to be to hone your skills. Yeah.
Which is a beautiful segue into Tony, because we're going to talk a bit about where you started, because I think, does that remind you that sort of, how do you feel thinking about this?
I just feel old. I have no idea what Twitch is. I might ask you.
So, when you started, after you left AFTRS, what was your? It wasn't quite like that, was it?
After I left AFTRS a long time ago, it was, fraught with anxiety, so it's similar. Insecurity, anxiety, not sure whether you had the goods to make it, all of those things, and then just scrambling to try to make a living. I think it was, it was probably less competitive then. There were more, per number of filmmakers versus the allocation of funding. There was more of it, and I kind of found a little cubbyhole for myself at SBS. Yeah. So which was kind of a blessing and a curse, because I was like the gay Chinese guy, which is a very niche market. And, but I just kept making this gay Chinese stuff. So that was my, and I made a living out of that, and then eventually you just could not keep doing that. And so
quite. So you
things,
sort of
only so many things
diversified.
I just became Chinese for a while. I dropped the gay. And,
you can do that.
Yeah, you can.
But I wanted to go back to, I think it was your second feature film, wasn't it? home song story, because I was just watching it again. It is, I think, at the moment on NITV.
Oh, is it?
Yes.
Oh, okay.
And I managed to persuade SBS to send us a clip. Thank you, SBS. Love you to bits. Let's just play a clip of Home Song, because I think it's an amazing story to reflect on.
Good man. You take care of us.
How long are we staying?
Always stay. It's our home now. You go how long?
4 months, tops. It'll go quickly.
Nice to see you, Rose.
Nice to see you, Joe. Uncle Joe, good man.
That's what you said about Uncle Bill.
Hey, look at your daughter. Beautiful like her mother.
Why are we leaving? You work it out.
长大了，不要犯跟妈妈同样的错误。
兄弟叫了，我来好好看看你自己，看看你自己，做这张脸。
要气死你！
You love your mother. Look after her. Your mother make everything good.
I always cry. I cried lots when I was seeing that. What do you think watching that now? What does it take you back to in terms of not necessarily, I mean, telling a personal story in that way must have been a hell of a decision.
Yeah, I guess part of my sort of impulse to tell stories was trying to process stuff that had happened to me as a kid and trying to understand it. And so that was kind of, you know, when you start out, I remember, you know, at film school someone said, oh, you know, you should write what you know. And so I started writing these stories, and first as a short film and then as a 1 hour piece for the ABC. And so this was the culmination of that body of work. Yeah, you know, now I just sort of think, wow, how did that get made? I mean, how would you possibly make a film like that these days? I feel really privileged. I feel really lucky that I got to tell that story. Amazing people got behind it. I got to work with Joan Chen, who's one of the best actresses in the world. I got to do something very personal, and so, you know, I feel very lucky.
Do you remember what you felt like when you walked on set for the first time?
Yeah, which is what I feel every time I walk on set. I feel like a fraud. Yeah, you know, yeah, it was very anxious because, you know, like I had been given a significant amount of money to make a very personal story, and you know, it had a lot of things going against it in terms of, you know, marketability, because it was about being Chinese in Australia and about mental health and immigration, you know, like all those hot button sexy topics that will drag an audience, you know, into the. So, you know, like I felt very, very lucky to be able to make it, but I also felt the burden of responsibility.
I remember you saying to me that out of that you sort of pivoted, to use a COVID word, much more in fact you moved into television after that. In fact, I think one of the first things you did was we worked on together at SBS Saved. So what was the decision behind that?
Well, I mean, when you were talking about this topic being success, my experience of success is bittersweet. Like it's always been success and failure are two sides of pretty much the same thing.
Yeah.
And I remember, like, I was really proud of making home song stories, and and people were affected by it. But I was in Toronto with the film at the film festival, and so this other filmmaker just told me what it had made on the opening weekend, and it was so depressing. and so, on the one hand, I felt like I'd made something that I was proud of, and it did really well in terms of, festivals and critical success and awards, all that stuff. It did really well. But on the other hand, I felt like I had failed because, I'd been given this amount of money, and this was one of the few Asian Australian films, and, I really wanted people to see it. And of course, that's what, I wish I'd had that version of success, people watching my work. And so I just kind of had a long, hard look at myself and thought, well, up until that point, I had been very much that, feature films were the thing, and, that was the pinnacle of creativity. And I just sort of realised, actually, people watch television. And so that was kind of like when I started pivoting and sort of thinking, I really want people to watch my work, I don't want to just get, because I do think you get better as you go along. I don't want to get better in a vacuum.
Yeah.
I want people to watch my work, and so that's when my partner Michael McMahon and I who was one of the producers on Home Song Stories. We started. We talked to SBS, and I went from Home Song Stories to Bogan Pride with Rebel Wilson.
Oh, oh my God, I love that series.
But it was, it was a really great thing because ultimately, most of the things that I've done which would be considered successful have been television projects.
I mean, you've had a tremendous career, let's be clear, and it's continuing, and you're a bloody legend in your own lifetime. Even though it seems ages since you started, it's not really.
No, it's a long time.
But I think it leads us into an interesting sort of discussion, really, about how you wrangle success, dealing with success or expecting success. How do you manage those things, Tony? And I'm going to throw it open to everybody, actually, because you're all under pressure to succeed.
For me, I just try to understand that everything has its own, just try to keep the measures realistic and try to divorce my ego from it, which is the hardest thing, to value yourself based on whether something has done well or not. And, some of the things I've done have done well in certain ways, and I mean, ultimately, the older I get, the more I feel like sometimes the most successful things are things that have a profound impact on the people who watch it and who can sort of, and that's a measure of success. That you have to build in all these things to make it horses for courses.
Yeah. Martin, you are under probably more daily pressure about success than anybody. How do you cope when the figures come out? Oh, God. Do you wait for them in the morning?
I get the figures every morning at 9 o'clock. And obviously when we're on air, I'm like, and I get a call from the network at 9:01 or before to talk about the figures. It's very difficult. But if they're good, you kind of go, woohoo, and then you go, shit, I've got loads of work to do. And if they're bad, it hangs around like a bad smell all day, but you still go, shit, I've got loads of work to do. And you just kind of move on. It doesn't last that long, that feeling, I don't think, because for me anyway, because I've just got so much work to do at all times. We film 6 months of the year, we cast 3 months of the year, we have to plan, we're constantly crewing. It's just too much to worry about. But although I do worry, obviously, I
mean, I can imagine getting those 901 phone calls every day. I mean, do you find that at the end of a series you have to sort of, what do you do to take a break?
Well, I don't. When we finish filming, I normally move up to Sydney. All post on MasterChef's done in Sydney in our post-production facility. So I normally move up to Sydney for a couple of months to oversee the last 30 or so episodes because I need to see them all in various stages and phases. So every episode of MasterChef that goes to air, I've probably seen 4 times before it's gone to air, and there's 65 of them, so my head's just frazzled. So when the edit's finished, I normally take at least 1 or 2 weeks off, and I just
1 or 2, that's huge.
I don't have because the
you
casting
treat
tour, so
yourself
I can't get any more time off than that. So I get I'm lucky if I get 2. It's normally 1 just to kind of.
How do you unwind? I mean, when you go home, what do you do?
I unwind in my car. I listen to audible books.
Okay.
I try not watch too much television when I'm at home with my family.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I just hang out with my son and my wife.
Okay.
Yeah.
God, I don't know how you manage that, but anyway, well done. God, you deserve a medal.
Thank you.
Laurent, how do you when Freeman was coming out and when all of the pressure of that production, but also in your past worlds, how do you cope with pressure and worrying about success? Do you worry about it?
No, I think I was saying to Tony just before, if you're a filmmaker, you're an optimist. Because the whole sort of project is, you know, I mean, who would do that? It's crazy. Yeah. You talk this up from nothing, you know? So, like, you need to somehow, I think people are all optimistic, otherwise we wouldn't do that job. So I think with Freeman, I had no idea, I didn't worry about it. It's only when the figures came up the next day and it was this whole hoo-ha about it, that I was mortified. I was like, what if it'd been a complete disaster? People hated it. You know, it's like it got me after, like I was actually quite upset after, even though it was good news. You know, it's like the way your brain works. So yeah, I think you can't worry about that. I think for me, the main thing is the true satisfaction I've had when you think you've done what you wanted to do. Okay. And I think with Freeman, that's a success for me. And it's a delight that it's done so well commercially and that it's spoken to people. But the true success for me is that that's kind of close to what I wanted to do. Okay. And when I watch that film, I don't go, oh, because, you know, we see all the process in our minds. So often you watch something and you go, oh, I wish I'd done that. I shouldn't have listened to that person. I should have done that differently. Or I wish I had had more money. And when you watch the film, it's just this buzzing of problems in your head. Yeah. And when I watch Freeman, I'm like, no, I mean, you know, yeah, there's not that many things that I go, I wish I had done differently, I wish. And that's liberating. Okay. So I feel like I can just, you know, like you can move on and, you know, you're not sort of haunted by those those thoughts.
Now, Naomi, how are you feeling about April the whatever when it's going on at Netflix worldwide?
Oh, I'm fine. Not worried at all, you know.
Yeah, right.
My anxiety disorder is doing great. No, it's a journey. I went through that with my show, because I didn't direct it or produce it. And, you know, as the writer, you're like, this is how, I know how it looks in my head and it'll be exactly that, I'm sure. And then it's just the things that didn't go the way you want that just like stick in your head. And they, you know, haunted me at night for months, even after we'd finished editing, and I'm still like, oh no, everyone's gonna see that 1 10-second moment and be like, well, this is awful. But no, that's not how it works. And we got to show the cast the show, and you know, they sat back and they loved it, and they had a lot of stakes in it, obviously. So that I could, at that point, I could take a step back. But in terms of feedback, I think when we made the web series, some like very toxic comedy blog thing, they get people to vote. One of the categories was worst web series of Fresh Blood, and we got runner-up. And I randomly took that to heart. But I think another thing that's helped me is Hum, one of the other co-creators, where we talk every single day, and she is like crazy in exactly the opposite way that I am, and she like just doesn't care about other people's opinions. And so having someone like that and learning from her that you know, you can believe you're right, and so then other people are wrong. So on the, you know, occasionally the bad write-ups that we've gotten, which is usually old men in newspapers being like, why are you talking about periods? That's gross.
Glad you didn't say old women running panels.
God, no, Denise.
That's fine.
you know, it got to a point where I saw a review like that. It wasn't even online, it was just in print, and it was just, it's a guy who didn't like the show, and my first instinct was like, oh, you're wrong. And so I recommend everyone get a friend like that who's crazy. And just start believing in yourself deliriously.
Good. Well, look, we're going to use the last few minutes to run through quickly some questions that we've got. One for you, Naomi. What challenges do you come up against when acting in your own work?
I have a way that I see things playing out when we're writing it, so the way we're joking in the writing room about how things should go, and then it used to irritate me when other actors would do it differently, and I'd be like, that's not the joke. But then you like watch it back later and you're like, oh no, it's better. So having things go differently than you wrote it on the page, it's a bit of a challenge to get out of your head and let other people have their own interpretation of it, but 99 times out of 100, even if it's not the way you thought about it, it's better because they're adding another layer. They're not taking anything away. And also just like not directing the other actors. I just had to shut up and I'm like, someone else will sort that. That's fine. I got to get into my emotional state.
Love it. Tony, how do you balance between being authentic to your story but also representing a wider community?
I don't. Honestly. I just try to tell my story. I try to forget that I represent a wider community because otherwise you just...
That's good. That's a nice
you wouldn't say anything.
Yeah. One other question for you. How did you push through feeling like a fraud on set?
I didn't. I just think you know, the problem is you go... Wherever you go, you take yourself. So whatever it is that you've got that you have to deal with is still going to happen, you know. So so every time I go onto set, I feel anxious and insecure, and you know all those things, and then you just deal with it, you know, because there are
the adrenaline.
Well, because you've still got to do a job. You know?
Yeah.
No time.
Yeah.
No, you could be working in a car factory.
Being time poor is really helpful.
Marty, were you a foodie before MasterChef?
Not really, no.
What's your favourite food now?
Oh, I hate fancy
Haggis?
food, to be honest. I hate fancy food. I would say my favourite food's probably fried chicken. Yeah.
Oh my God, I love it. Okay. Oh, this is a nice question, and we might end on this. How do you? This is for all of you. How do you feel the post-project blues once a film has finished? If so, how do you deal with it? Laurence, why don't we start with you?
Yes, total grief. It's just terrible when it finishes because you've lived with this story for years, and it's like a marriage, some sort of affair you're having. Like you think about it all the time, and so when it ends, and if it ends well, that's lovely, I think. But eventually you've got to stop thinking about it and think about something else. So I think it's grief, really. And I guess then you've got to, you know, what I've learned from this project, for me personally, is that you've got to have an idea. It's not just, I want to do a film about this story. And particularly in documentary terms, we think a lot about story, but I think there's another layer to it, which is what's the idea, like what you're trying to do here. And if you have an idea, it really is comfortable. You know, it's something that's just nurturing, that you can keep thinking endlessly, and it's never boring. And so, yeah, having new ideas that come like that have that same pulsating, you know. And I think I'm working on a bunch of projects that are like that, and I'm thinking that's good. That's what it's about. I think is getting that, that sort of creative food, you know, something that keeps giving. But yeah, it equally could not have happened, and I could be sitting there going, what next? What am I doing, you know? So I could see that and you guys have done, you know, heaps more than me, and you have a lot of other things to say about that, but for me it was very much grief.
Okay. Marty, MasterChef hasn't ended, so we can't talk about that one. But when God, it's ridiculous.
When I finish a series in post-production, it's the happiest day of the year. Literally, so it's the opposite.
Yeah. What about when other shows that you've worked on? Because you haven't always worked on MasterChef.
No, that's true, but I'm generally very happy when post is finished, because it's when you've signed it off and you're done.
Yeah.
You know. simple, short answer, sorry.
No, I love it. It's perfect. Tony?
I'm like Marty. I'm really glad when something's finished. I don't have to think about it anymore. And I'm also like Laurent because I sort of want to think about the next thing. Like I don't get excited about the next thing.
Cool. Naomi?
I don't think the one thing I've done hasn't finished yet. Like it feels.
That's why I wanted to end.
Yeah.
I
was depressed after we finished shooting the pilot because I didn't know where I was going. It was my first time like being, a main character on a TV show. Even though it was one episode, it was like the best experience of my life. But I have thought about this non-stop, and it's just like the staggered releases. So ask me in a month or two.
I think I might ask you in about 10 years. Because I reckon by then you'll be going, oh, thank God, we've got the next one to do.
Well, yeah, I think unlike a film or a documentary, we hope to get another season. But I also have started working on other things because you don't want to, if it doesn't get renewed, just be like, oh,
yeah,
I have nothing.
Good advice. The bigger the slate, the better.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, and on that note, I think it's time to wrap it up. But I do want to say thanks again to ACMI, and please, if you're in Melbourne or come to Melbourne, come and visit the new space. It's amazing. And Film Victoria for their support, and of course AFTRS. And don't forget that this is a tandem event. So in 2 weeks' time, on the 6th of April, AFTRS will be doing the next one of Meet the Creators, and they're actually doing a great one on the sort of big shows up there. And in Melbourne, we're going to host a little watch party. So Melbourne people aren't excluded either. So thanks very much to all of our supporters. But what about a big fat round of applause for our amazing panel? That's it for us. April the 27th, our next one here at ACMI. We're doing sport. Very different from this lot.
Yeah.
But thanks again, everybody. So goodbye to the rest of Australia, and thanks for joining us.
Thank you.